Now it's my pleasure to introduce your presenter today, Peyton Marshall. Since 1985, Peyton Marshall has served in product management, sales, and senior management roles in a number of B2B sectors. For 12 years, he was an investment banker, most of that time at Goldman Sachs, structuring and selling complex and innovative financial solutions to global, corporate, and financial institution CFOs. Since 1997, he's been on the receiving end of all kinds of sales approaches as CFO of 3 public biotech companies, CEO of 1 public biotech company, and COO of a private drug discovery company. He has been CEO and chairman of a private cloud software company since 2012. So with that, Peyton, welcome.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks to everyone for being on the webinar today. Value propositions provide clear answers to simple questions. What are the 3 things that make you better than the competition? And what is that worth to your customer? Value propositions build fluency in the language, in the business language of the customer. Value propositions deliver B2B sales results by building sales confidence. The best organizations using value propositions report 5 to 15% higher close rates in the opportunities where they use the value proposition, and 5 to 25% higher prices in deals where value propositions are used. In today's webinar, we're going to look at using value propositions, delivering results with value selling. And to do that, we're going to start by looking at today's B2B sales challenges and the responses of commercial organizations to those challenges. We'll then go to how value selling is actually done, the experience from B2B sales teams of where they're using it in the process and how. Before we then come back to some of the organizational questions relating to value proposition deployment. Finally, we'll finish off with a few observations about the keys to success. So let's start on the challenges side, where the context is really that B2B sales challenges are significant. And we'll organize those with the 5 C's. Customer connection is a challenge. Commoditization is a challenge. Building customer consensus is a challenge. And complexity is an issue. And underlying all those is maybe the most important one of all that relates to customer information. So let's look at each of these challenges in turn. First, customer connection. Access may or may not be the problem, but reports are that buyers are further through the sales cycle and further through the buying decision than they ever were before they talk to a sales rep. Just as important, there are plenty of gatekeepers to get past. But even when reps reach the right people, the buyers report that the calls and the conversations are ineffective. This survey by Forrester of buyer executives found that the reps calling on them tended to be knowledgeable about their own company and their own products, but those same reps rarely understood the buyer's issues and how they, as reps, and how their organization could help. The final report card, 12% of sales calls add value. The second C, commoditization. The survey by the Aberdeen Group of marketing and sales executives, this time on the selling side, found that their #1 challenge in delivering the right message to the right target at the right time was how they improved positioning and differentiation in their messaging and in their sales presentations. How do they tell a better, unique story? Challenge #3, the third C, customer consensus. Yes, we're in a world where the buyers are turning more and more to committee buying decisions, larger buyer teams, consensus unanimous decisions. The average buying group size has risen to 5.4. The fourth C, complexity. Given that complexity, buyer teams find it harder and harder to invest the time. There are more and more issues in taking risk within an organization in making a decision or a recommendation. The result from an SBI deal survey is that while wins were 2 times losses in that deal outcome survey, no decisions were almost 2 times the wins. Finally, fifth, customer information. Yep, there's more information online. Buyers are armed and dangerous with that information. But more importantly, there's more discipline at the buyers. Buyers do the math. They analyze economic impact. This survey, performed for CFO Magazine, found that among buyer executives, they highlighted that their finance team helped select vendors, helped review business requirements, and helped actually prepare and review financial analyses and ROIs in somewhere between 90 and 98% of the companies surveyed. So with all this said, it's important that great commercial organizations are responding. There are 3 big trends in sales and commercial strategy. The first is specialization, as new and specialized members of the team are introduced into the customer relationship, into the customer-facing conversations. Secondly, there's customization of content, solutions, and conversations. Third, digital tools. And what's interesting as you look at these trends is that they actually address the 5 C's very specifically. Sales teams with specialized, what we'll call pre-sales people involved, get very directly at this issue of complexity. With the specialists, you can deal with the technical challenges and complex organizational challenges. With more team members, you can deal with multiple stakeholders and build consensus. Customized products and solutions address commoditization. And customized content and customized understanding of customers in a customer conversation help make better customer connections. Finally, digital sales tools help counteract the effect of better customer information. So let's look at these trends sequentially. We'll start with specialization, where sales teams increasingly include specialized roles. We'll call as a broad group pre-sales professionals who are in customer conversations to provide in-depth product and technical knowledge, to customize a package or solution, or provide solution use and implementation experience, and all of the above. They come with a number of titles, and we'll talk about how they lay out in a minute. Sometimes product managers are part of the customer-facing teams, but then you have full-time members of the team, including pre-sales, technical sales, and solution consultants. A McKinsey team writing in the Harvard Business Review found the reason to include pre-sales professionals: improvement in conversion rates, revenue, and sales speed. Having new team members changes the sales dynamic because with pre-sales professionals involved in customer-facing teams, we've got different roles, different personas, and distinct customer relationships. So that sales has become a team sport with diverse skills, experience, and temperaments within the team. That presents some risks, but it also presents opportunities. A shared value proposition helps make sales teams more effective. It becomes a platform for sales collaboration. it's consistent messaging, it's a set of messages and understandings of the customer that a pre-sales professional can share with an account executive. Let's turn to the second trend, customization. Products, solutions, content, and conversations, where the sales objective is greater customer specificity. That starts with customer understanding, knowing and having specific business knowledge of the customer, understanding their organization, understanding individual stakeholders. We know the online tools that are available for that. But it also goes to customized solutions, whether it's different kinds of offerings, gold, silver, bronze, whether it's packaging several solutions in a way that meet a specific set of objectives, or whether it's even customized one-off solutions. And then the final piece is putting customer and solution together. It's a fit. So having specific content, customer-specific outcomes, and a specific value created in business case. A Forrester survey of buyers found that the #1 reason for a B2B purchase, 72%, was the fit for a specific need at a specific time. Customized quantitative value propositions support a specific business case to buy. They're a way to fit a solution to customer specifics, but they're also a way to have customer-specific understanding and customer-specific conversations. The third trend, digital tools. And we'll look at digital tools before the meeting, but also during the meeting. Let's start with before. Old-style early meeting prep. If sales can find useful material, there's often too much of it. There's no common format. It's often not very specific. There's no bottom line or simple, clear answer. And it's often not very engaging. The result? Almost 60% of a salesperson's time on average is not spent selling. Instead, they're busy finding content, modifying it, and figuring stuff out, not talking to customers. Meaning preparation with value propositions is simple and focused. It focuses on customer value. It gets to simple messages on differentiation. It gets to the bottom line. Next, let's look at digital tools during the meeting. How does sales engage the customer? I'll let Dilbert do the talking here. We all love our PowerPoint slides, but they're so 90s. Smart digital value propositions make meetings more effective. Agile digital conversations engage the customer. They're interactive. They elicit responses from the customer. Unlike one-way monologues, linear presentations. Steve Jobs had an axe to grind, but he highlighted that the world has moved on and is moving on from PowerPoint. By 2020, over half the workforce will be millennials. Guess what? They want digital tools, not PowerPoint decks. So now let's turn to how sales teams are doing this. How are they actually getting involved and executing in value selling? And as some of that thought process, we're going to think about this at different points in the sales cycle, where we could characterize a typical sales cycle as starting with a lead being qualified, generating some early engagement, before we're in getting the customer to then commit to evaluate a solution. That evaluation stage involves building a consensus to buy. Before then, the T's and C's, the documents, the compliance, and the negotiation take place. And I think as everyone realizes, the objectives through the sales cycle are different. Early on in qualifying, a rep's trying to figure out whether this is a good customer to spend time on. At the same time, they're trying to get the customer to spend time on their solution. But then the serious lifting and the serious commitment is getting a customer to actually engage, to spend real time, to pull team members in to evaluate. And that's getting a customer to the point where they're recognizing potential value. During the evaluation phase itself, it's about diligence, it's about building confidence in invalidated, de-risked value of a solution. With that in hand, then by the time we're in the documentation and negotiation phase, a value proposition helps add urgency to the process. Having a shared business case helps move to the closing point. So now if you think about use of value propositions through those phases, you can almost think of this and the underlying content as about peeling an onion, as there being different layers of content that match conversations and match sales stages and objectives. So let's start with the early stages in the sales cycle, and qualifying and engaging, where you're both trying to, a rep's trying to understand customer potential as well as get the customer engaged. So now we're talking about sales and using value early in the sales cycle. I think it's better to have sales reps speak about that than me. First, preparing for a call. Here's an account executive on how they use the value prop. In minutes, I can find an industry-specific value proposition that helps understand the 2 to 3 business drivers to discuss on the first call. Second, qualifying. Value propositions help determine whether to spend more time. Value propositions engage the customer to provide valuable information, and it becomes clear with the value prop whether the customer has a business need or priority that we can address. Third, how do we get the right person or the right people involved? Even when I get engagement, I worry about whether my contact will introduce me to the senior buyer. We've all seen window shoppers. So here's a rep using a value proposition as a reason to engage relevant stakeholders, actually using it as a bargaining chip to find the right person, to get decision makers. Related to that is getting the right next meeting. A value proposition showing a typical industry customer's gains using our solution fits with the senior management audience seeking to improve top or bottom line results. A value proposition makes the meeting meaningful from the start. Let's move now to the middle of the sales cycle, getting commitment to evaluate. And this is more the world where pre-sales is often beginning to get involved alongside of sales. So these uses of value propositions probably correspond to both groups. So there's establishing early credibility. Here's a national account manager talking about value propositions saying more than we're better than the other guys. It's showing we understand the customer's business and having the numbers. It helps connect with a senior executive. And we all know that those are often accidental, out of the blue meetings. Here's a sales rep talking about how they've been trying to get at the COO when suddenly there's a random sighting. The value proposition helped this sales rep have the 2-minute elevator pitch, or 3 minutes in this case, where the rep could describe how they were different and roughly what that was worth. Keep a meeting focused. Yes, we all know about technical complexity, and we all know how technical complexity can derail a meeting. So here's an account executive saying, some of our solutions are complex. Value propositions help that account executive to quickly develop a presentation, but also, and more importantly, to translate technical features into a business case. And last, there's confidently selling value, not price. I've never felt so confident going into a deal at list price. Now we get to the heavy lifting, the diligence phase, the point where the buyer is committed to evaluate and the seller is working to build a consensus to buy. Often this is also the stage where pre-sales is primary, with sales also playing an important role. So, first, how do you use a value proposition to help customize a solution? Choosing the best combinations is often difficult. It slows us down. Using our value propositions provides some answers that helps us figure out what combination of products create meaningful value. Faster customer decisions. Managing multiple stakeholders in a meeting. Here's a sales engineer, self-admitted techie, saying they used to let the technical questions turn into a distraction or a tangent. This sales engineer now uses a value proposition to answer a technical question with a business answer. That helps turn the technical stakeholder conversations to offline follow-ups and keeps a big meeting with a diverse audience and a diverse group of stakeholders moving forward. Supporting diligence, working through the value prop, getting agreement on assumptions clearly matters. Here's a pre-sales professional talking about how value props help them answer questions and develop a business case. Finally, trusted advisor relationships. Your organization always claims to be a strategic partner, but now you're really acting like one. Finally, in the closing and negotiation stage. Here, everyone's involved, but the primary responsibilities tend to shift back to sales and may even be beginning to shift into implementation. So first, perhaps most obviously, but if the value proposition's been developing all along, that becomes the business case to buy, and it becomes a shared business case to buy with the customer. It's funny how at the end of a sales cycle, the last minute questions come up. And sales teams all the time think their customer has budget for a particular decision, suddenly to find that their challenge is coming from finance on the customer side. Having a shared value proposition at that point means that they can make the case and punch through the problems of is there a sufficient return to justify the spend? Getting through documentation. Interestingly enough, by building a consensus with a business sponsor on the case, that helps the business sponsor accelerate the closing time and closing decision. And finally, and more importantly in the subscription era, is post-sale. Renewing an agreement and developing the next opportunity. Here's one account relationship manager who talks to their routine discipline. For their top 20 accounts, we develop an analysis every year of the value we create. It helps for the executive interaction. It helps to discuss value instead of price cuts, and it becomes a natural way to add to the business. So now let's turn to organizational deployment, and let's dig in a little bit more, looking across the kinds of organizations, where we'll start with offerings, where we have single product offerings, product and service packages, multi-product platforms, and custom solutions. And as we think across that spectrum, we have sales reps who are focused in different ways on few products, on multi-product situations or on solutions. And sometimes those are replicable products as opposed to the one-offs. So if you look at rep types, you see the following kinds of titles for these different sorts of offering situations, where a single product business unit may be out to offer a single product, or a new account rep for a multi-product platform may have a gateway product they're offering. But by the time we're into existing relationships for multi-product sales, we're more likely to have the account executive working across a portfolio of products. When you think about pre-sales titles and roles across the spectrum, across the first three, we have our product manager. Sometimes those people are called business development representatives. But then in our single product or related product situation, there may be subject matter experts or technical salespeople involved. In the multi-product platform, we often have full-time titles like solution consultants and sales engineers. And in the custom solution situation, we may have solution architects. It's interesting to see how that complexity creates its own strategic dynamic, where customization may be enhancing revenue and pricing, but it has its cost, because pre-sales professionals are often expensive. That tends to drive particular strategic transitions within a business unit, where there's the addition of products to a rep's portfolio is one way to cut on costs or increase efficiency. There's customizing packages and solutions is another way to improve efficiency. There's taking those custom solutions and turning them into products, productizing one-offs to make them replicable as another answer to that. And across the spectrum, there's making conversations and content specific to the customer. In thinking about how value is used then, there's some nuances and some differences as the conversation is tailored to customer specifics. So for a single product, the conversation may start off with representative product value before that's turned into specific value created for the customer. For the gold, silver, bronze, that may start again with product value moving to specific value created, but there's an additional way that value is used there, where specific value may actually be used in selecting the best package for the customer, and that becomes a collaborative conversation. For multi-product platforms, we've got the product at a time approach to value, in other words, a la carte product value. But what we also see is customized value for a package or a bundle of offerings. We also see the relationship or portfolio value approach, and sometimes that's the domain of value engineers. Finally, with custom solutions, value can be used early on in the sales cycle to illustrate how a solution provider has generated value for another client. Before they then get into solution configuration, and as part of the solution configuration, they're building in parallel a business case for the complex solution. So across these spectrums, what we really see is the pre-sales professional is helping to deal with product complexity in using value, but they're also, in some cases, getting into solution customization as well. Now let's look at how marketing and sales are approaching value propositions. And we'll start with the classic approach, where you start with the content, quantifying value, then you make it usable, design great value props, then you publish them or make them available to sales, who then do their thing. And the classic roles here are marketing on the one side and sales on the other. This kind of world looks a lot like a 20th century newspaper, when content was primarily to be read, where you have your reporter or your author, you have your editor making the content readable, usable, and you're throwing it over the wall to the readers, unlikely to hear very much back from them. Both technology and organizations have changed. And while there are still often internal sides and external sides, those are blurring. But in addition to the marketing groups and the sales groups we had before, more and more we have product management and pre-sales. And some of those product management people cross into pre-sales and perform both roles in some circumstances. So what we've got in terms of skill sets are product management who understand technical content, customer experience, and look after content quality. We've got marketing looking to make content usable, findable, and build good tools. We have sales. Yes, their role is still qualify, engage, and close, but they have some help. And pre-sales is there to help credentialize, customize, and help with the validation process. So now, when you think about using PowerPoint, old school is product management, marketing, publishing to sales, but now that commercial team is a lot more complex. Early in the sales cycle with sales use, in the middle with pre-sales use, and then again at the end with sales use. To get a more effective approach to the modern situation, digital online content helps, and it's really about a different approach, where it's about speed and agility focused on sales adoption. So we start with the content, quantifying value. We design great value props. We publish them with those sales uses and pre-sales uses in mind. But very importantly, in the middle of that process is a focus on sales adoption, where it's essential to get feedback so that the content and the quantification and the data can continually be improved, but also so that the usability and the format and the layout can be improved. Those value propositions should be agile. They should continue to reflect what's being learned in the field, and they can with digital tools. So who's accountable for value proposition effectiveness? Particularly early use, content usability, feedback, and adoption. So it's natural to think of product management being good, at least initially, for the value content. If there's specialized marketing people, they may take on more the role of making that content usable. Early sales use, that's actually interesting and a little bit harder to define. And one of the best ways to figure that out is to make sure somewhere in the middle there's a mobilizer for sales adoption. That mobilizer can help figure out the best early sales use, but also by being actively involved on both sides, get better content feedback and improve, as well as usability feedback and improve. Those are the keys to successful pre-sales use, as well as to successful sales use. So now we come to the keys to success. To implement value selling in a B2B organization, great content is a good start. Usable tools and training help, but adoption of value selling needs strong support. So let's look at 5 keys to sales team adoption. First, identify and support value rock stars. Some people call them value champions. How do you find those people? Well, they're everywhere. They're product managers with sales backgrounds who talk value early. They're pre-sales, technical sales, subject matter experts who make the transition from technical to customer-centric and talk value. Sometimes they're experts and engineers. But often it's the case that you can find salespeople who've been selling value all along. And you would think that when you identify those champions or rock stars, that you could leave them to it and they'll get along on their own. Actually, it's most important to spend the most time with them. Early on, you need to support those value rock stars. Give them tool tutorials, brainstorm, understand what you can, help test your customer data on them. Give them the slides and follow-up materials they're looking for. Respond to their feedback. Make sure they get high fives, because that's the best way to accelerate change, get early success, and quite frankly, those rock stars and champions are going to give you the best insights into best practices for sales and pre-sales use. Number 2, celebrate success, communicate war stories. One deal closed with value selling is a big deal. Celebration motivates and builds confidence. Tangible benefits don't hurt, because all that celebration together with payoff helps viral propositions go viral. But it's important to do more than celebrate. It's also important to communicate the actual war stories coming out of a value selling situation. That helps reinforce motivation, but those war stories provide concrete insights for other reps into when to apply value, how to have a value conversation, how to get resources and support, the simple logistics. Third, build and cultivate senior sponsorship. Tone comes from the top, and having the C-suite routinely having conversations about value of products, value of solutions in their discussions on Bloomberg News, that's important. Having them have those discussions internally and in the boardroom, those are all important. But then deploying senior executives in a value rollout where they're providing webinar intros with high fives, where they're kicking off sales conferences with value selling war stories. And just as important, often more important than commissions, is internal recognition. So recognizing people are successfully deploying value among the sales and pre-sales team really matters and helps build momentum. And when that recognition comes from the C-suite, it's more powerful. Fourth, take an agile approach. Agile marketing. Value propositions are never finished works of art. Take an agile approach. Deploy fast. Don't delay for perfection. You will learn, you will improve. Generate feedback from early versions. Continue to refine, continue to modify. That will increase adoption. And it's all about team. It's all about pricing, product management, sales, and pre-sales. Win the next game. Finally, the secret sauce, sales mobilizers. Empower them. What is a sales mobilizer? What's a typical profile of a sales mobilizer? Sales mobilizer often and should have some product and value confidence. That confidence may be somewhat more important than deep knowledge, but they need to be articulate. Second, the sales mobilizer needs to be someone who's credible with the sales force, because they need to spend time in front of customers as part of value conversations. Also, and maybe most importantly of all, a sales mobilizer needs to have a cultural objective that's about teamwork, it's about adoption, and it's about leverage. The sales mobilizer doesn't mobilize if they're out to create turf in a sales process, if they're out to be the value expert that needs to be in every single conversation. This is about seeding and getting adoption. It's about moving value into the sales and pre-sales organization so that everyone's more effective. What's the usual type? Well, it's usually a pre-sales type. Often, a millennial is a good role for this. It usually starts as a part-time role. What's interesting is it's often a great career opportunity for the person taking on that mobilizer role, where it gives them customer exposure, where they're the first ones to make the initial value presentation, but it also helps them tune in, because their job is to get customer reactions. Their job is to evangelize value and support sales. That then helps in identifying and replicating success. If we were going to give a Nobel Prize in sales, Albert Einstein probably should have gotten it. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Clear, direct value propositions used well build customer trust. Thanks.
Thank you, Peyton, for sharing those insights. We've had a few questions come in during the webinar, and there's still time to enter your questions into the panel on your screen. While you're entering, a reminder to complete the 10-second survey while exiting today's webinar to receive a copy of Irresistible Value Propositions and be entered into a raffle for one free copy of Amp Up Your Sales. We really appreciate your interest in LeveragePoint. If you'd like to learn more or see a personalized value proposition, please check the appropriate boxes in the survey upon exiting today's webinar. Okay, I see some good questions so far. And to answer the most popular one, yes, this webinar is recorded and the slides and recording will be emailed to you within 2 business days. Now it's my pleasure to bring back Peyton Marshall for the Q&A. All right, Peyton, the first question for you. How do you get salespeople to pay attention to quantitative value propositions?
Ooh, okay, well that's a great question. The best solution I've seen to that lately, you can't always count on it, was we were involved with a value proposition rollout. And there was this great opportunity when the CEO actually got put on the spot on Kramer, where they were asked a tough question about a new product, and the CEO had a very well articulated 40-second answer on Kramer based on their value proposition despite their higher price. Film clip like that is gold. And so that's one great approach. There are plenty of other ways, though. And I start with success stories well publicized. That's one of the keys to getting people to pay attention. Supporting reps when they start to ask questions. So I think a period of intensive care as reps go, so how do I do this? What do I do? How do I find the value proposition? That's always a good approach. Because what you really want to have happen is one successful rep passing word to others, and that's what makes it viral.
Okay, great. Second question here. If an inexperienced rep asks how to have their first value conversation, what do you say? What advice do you give them?
Gee, Brian, you're a career sales guy. Why don't you start on this one?
Sure. So there's actually two thoughts here. One, actually, Peyton referred to a few slides back, which, salespeople learn by seeing other salespeople talk through the value conversation. Training certainly helps, but seeing someone do it live and take questions and respond to them is really the best approach. And Peyton referred to sort of a person within the organization called a sales mobilizer or a rock star who fills that role of really being the coach and allowing the new salespeople or salespeople new to the process to watch how they do it. The other way I think that we find successful is really to arm the rep with a case study type value proposition. They approach a new client or a prospect with, with our solution, you were able to create, or we were able to create several $100,000 in value at a client similar to you. Would you be interested in hearing about that? And that's a great lead-in, and I would think in the majority of cases, a prospect or a client is going to want to hear that story.
Two great answers. I think the add-on I would have is really just to highlight what's hard about a sales call. And what's usually hard is that early period and figuring out where you are relative to the competition. So the importance and the usefulness of the value prop in that is a motivator. And so if you've told the war stories, if you helped reps understand that, getting them motivated, giving them courage, if they've gotten a chance to present with a mobilizer, if they've gotten a chance to present with a rock star, or even if not, a few simple lead-ins like your case study situation, I think is a great approach.
Great. So question number 3. Is it reasonable to think that account executives or reps will use value propositions, or shouldn't value be the domain of a few experts within your organization?
Value is the domain of everyone. Subject matter experts are expensive. Value conversations don't have to be in depth, especially in the early stages in the sales cycle. 3 ways your solution's better, what that's worth based on representative data. Those elements help new account reps, they help AEs qualify and get the right meeting. So value's shared. And as a matter of practice, what sometimes you see is the first value conversations for a product or some of the first deeper value conversations are had by pre-sales professionals, subject matter experts, product managers. But if a value proposition isn't simple enough to highlight the 3 things that make us better, the bottom line answer, what it means, then the value proposition is probably too complicated. The burden of communication should be on the speaker. If a product manager hasn't set out a value prop clearly and simply enough, it needs revision.
Great. Okay. Maybe 1 or 2 more. Let's see. What's the best way to summarize an answer in a value conversation? Do you use the amount of value created or total value created, TCO, ROI, payback? Which approach is best?
Well, I think you need to decide what works best and be prepared. But always, you want to have a net bottom line accessible. Just a simple statement about how much money you will make for the customer. You can use other measures depending on the specifics of the value prop and maybe the specifics of the audience. So if all the value for your product or solutions from cost savings, TCO can be a very good choice. But I'd be careful with that. The detailed 10, 12 element TCO stacks are often too much information. They often confuse and they often point people away from what's important. So keep your TCO stacks simple. If the customer's choice is between to spend or not to spend, sort of the classic finance choice, ROI is a very good measure. So if you're part of an internal budget battle or you need to support a sponsor in a budget battle, that's a good way and a good number to be ready for the questions from finance. And finally, if you're talking to finance, ROI, payback, they're often a good choice.
Okay, great. And one final one here, because we hear this a lot at Leverage Point, this question. What role do value propositions play in negotiations with procurement, so the end of the sales cycle?
That's a great one. Some people think you hold the value proposition till then. But I think my view, at least, is if you haven't started to build a consensus business case until you get to procurement, it may be too late. Now, that's not to say all procurement professionals don't care about value. Some procurement professionals are not just incentivized on price, but you can't count on it. The primary audience for your value proposition is your sponsor, your key recommender, or your business decision maker. If you've built a shared business case with a sponsor, that can and should add urgency to the negotiation process. That value proposition becomes, and that shared value proposition becomes the basis for your sponsor to navigate the case for you internally.
Great, thanks, Peyton. There's a few more questions, but we're going to wrap it up, and we'll try to answer those offline. Just a brief reminder before you go that next month we are hosting another webinar, Accelerate Product Launch Success with Value Selling, presented by Chris Provines. If you're interested in registering for this webinar, please check the appropriate box in the exit survey. Okay, and that is it for us today. Thank you all for taking the time to join us, and a special thank you to Peyton for his insights. From all of us here at Leverage Point, have a wonderful rest of your week and take care. Thank you.